Hey, and welcome guys. Today I'm just having a little fun. This was the old AT-M6 Revell kit from The Last Jedi, Star Wars The Last Jedi. As you can see, I've already taken it apart. I built this model very quickly back when the movie came out and those kits came out. I just did some washes on it. I think I did some oil washes and things of that nature and posted it. It's just been sitting around. Kind of lackluster, so I thought I'd do something fun with it. Not quite sure how I'm going to do it. I would like to maybe add some more detail to it and obviously do a full paint job on it, but maybe something different. I'm thinking maybe like a snow version of it that's kind of white and gray, maybe something along that line. I'm not sure. So now I'm just kind of cleaning it off. I had my washes and then they were just covered with a dull coat. I believe this like a tester's dull coat. And I've just taken alcohol, and as you can see, I've already kind of started on this and quite easily took off that wash. So I'm going to clean up all these parts. I would like to make some, just some alterations to it, maybe clean up some of the panel lines. I'm not sure yet. And but I'm going to first get it cleaned up, and maybe we can decide where we're going to go with this. Alright, so the first thing I decided to work on is just making this more accurate. He's not very accurate, so I have this little Bandai one, and one of the big issues is that for the super laser that's mounted on its back, as you can see, it's flush right there, and that's a lot more accurate to what you see on the screen. And with this kit, if you recall, for some reason they had the laser kind of mounted up top to where this section actually came over and was not level. I don't know why. There was plenty of space in there, just poorly designed. It could have easily, even with this module, could have fit in there. So what I've done is I clipped off some of the tabs that held it in place. I also had to grind down this. I had to take off probably 1/4 inch of this, which is fine. It doesn't really, it's not really going to be noticeable. It's pretty easy. This will still fit into place. But now I'll be able to bring this down and make this level. Now it's still not accurate, as you can see on this one. The gun and its array kind of protrude out from that opening, whereas here it's more embedded. Just the way this is built and all connected, it just would tear it, would basically break it all apart. So that's just going to have to stay the way it is, but we will be able to get it down level and it'll have a much nicer uniform look, at least better than what it was. Another thing I'm going to do is inside, obviously you see where just have these empty panels. It's not real noticeable, but I'm going to fill that in, add some details, some panel lines to that. Once this is in place, you will still be able to see inside here in some of the opening areas, and this will have a more detailed look to it instead of just that kind of open area right there. So the plan is just to add a lot of detail. As you can see on this kit, there's detail in different places. Now the panel lines are way off the mark on there. They're not even close, so not a whole lot we're going to do about that, but we're going to have some, just take some bits of styrene and whatnot, add detail throughout, put some detail on the undercarriage of the vehicle, and we're going to do that on both sides. We may just go ahead and paint it back in the gray color. I'm still kind of decided what we can do with that, but I do just want to add more detail, make it give a more clean look to it. Also clean up, try to hide some of the panel lines. So you can see I've added some putty and stuff in here. So I'm just going to be working on that, and then we'll be right back. Okay, I've got the body sealed up. We managed to get the laser gun fairly flush with the rest of the body, and I sealed it up. Just using super glue to mash the body together. As you can see, we put those inner walls with some detail in there. Once we paint over, I think it'll match. I think that really helps because when you do look in there, before you kind of saw that it was hollow, it just gives the wall much more beefier look, more thickness like it really is on top of heavy armor on there. A little bit on the back's visible. You can also see where I've just take some bits and pieces of styrene and added on just for a little bit more detail. I've also added in some of these little holes. You can see them here on the smaller one. They're more of an oval shape, but I really couldn't figure out an easy way to do that. All I did was this with my pin vise and a drill bit. Just drill just a little bit into the plastic to make those different holes, and I added that on both sides. Now the sides are different from each other, so I didn't really worry about matching on there. Add a little bit on the bottom. I'll probably do a little bit more. And but we're going to prime over it and see how it all looks once we have some primer on there. All right, we have our walker all put together now, and we put on a black coat of primer. I think all the added details blend in nicely. It's kind of hard to tell what was added and what was already there. I think reprofiling the laser gun to make it more flush with the body really helps to make it look more like what was on the movies. So now I just want to go into painting. I do think I want to paint it in a different color other than just a gray, just to change it up a little bit. So I'm thinking maybe more like a tan or brown, more like a desert style pattern, and do some weathering on that. So I'm just going to try to figure that out, and we'll come back once we get some painting done on them. Alright, as you can see, we have our base color on our walker here. I first painted it with a little bit of Vallejo light brown. This is 71.027. I did that on the whole model on top of that black primer that we first did. I then mixed in some bone white to that light brown to make a lighter color. As you can tell, I have some colors kind of changing gradually into each other. I did the light brown first and mixed in a few drops and kind of went in the middle of all the different panels. I then switched to just the pure bone white to go in the middle of all that. So we're just have this gradual changing of colors that just kind of blends all together. I try to get a little bit more white on surface areas that would be bleached out by the sun a little bit more. I also mixed in with the light brown just a few drops of black to darken it up, to get sort of in the recessed areas, which areas that probably wouldn't fade as much if they were kind of in between these areas where the legs are at, and this kind of a shaded area. I also use that color kind of do some of these panel line accents to bring those out. So pretty pleased with how that turned out. It's looking pretty good. And from here we're going to go on to weathering. I'm probably going to do some dry pastels. Probably stick with that. If it's kind of a desert or beach area, I don't know if I'm going to do more of a beach, more of a desert type area. Don't see a lot of rust because there's no moisture, so I'm going to be easy on the rust, but I'd like to darken up some of the areas, maybe some area where fluids were leaking out, and go along that route. We also need to do some detailed painting. I want to paint up the guns, some kind of dark color for the different barrels, and just a few detail painting, maybe like these shock absorbers or whatever they are. These things right here, we'll maybe paint those in the chrome color to give them a metallic look, and maybe some metallic accents throughout the model. But I think the base color looks pretty good, and pretty pleased with the paint job on that. Alright, we have our walker, we have a gloss coat applied to them and given that time to dry. So now I'm just working on some of the weathering. Now the first part I've decided to do is I've made some washes using some oil paints. Now there are products you can buy to do the same things, probably do it better. I happen to have a lot of these oil paints. My wife paints, so we have a large selection of these oil paints. I have some burnt umber and some of this is called Payne's Gray, which is kind of a blackish color, and I mixed that in with a little enamel thinner, and I just have some Testors enamel thinner and mix that up and until I get kind of a watery consistency. This is actually starting to dry a little bit, but I can use that, and let me just mix some up a little bit here. I want a really fine watery type consistency, and now I can use that. And we're just going to darken up all these panel lines. I'm just going to come in here and touch it, and it'll spread through there. And you can always, once that kind of dries, you can take a Q-tip and clean it off, add a little bit thinner if you want to. And this is the reason we put that gloss coat, is because we're putting chemicals on here and we don't want to remove the paint job that we've already done. So but we're going to go in and just darken up all these panels, and then when you get it to that watery like consistency, it'll spread out and follow the lines. So a lot of times you can just kind of touch it right in the crevice and get it to spread out, and it'll really start bringing out those details. And we'll also, I mixed in with that burnt umber, kind of a brown color, not the most pleasant looking color there, but we'll do that around some of these areas. I've already did it in some of the areas to kind of have that worn look to it. kind of like fluids are coming out and stuff of that nature, and give a little bit of variant in the colors. So I'm going to do this throughout the whole model, and then we'll come back after that. All right, I've been working on doing my wash and my pins. I actually took the oils and dabbed it on a few places and kind of brushed it, and then thinned it down with the thinner, and just kind of brushed it all over the whole model and kind of give it streaks. I don't know if it's showing up too well, but it has some very light streaks and discolorization. And so now I'm going a little bit more accurately with this Tamiya weathering kit. I'm using the soot and the rust, and I'm just using the little brush that's included in here. I'm just kind of get some dark colors, and just on some areas that I kind of want to darken up, and usually on some of the leading edges. And if you mess up, you can come back and wipe this off. But just kind of weathering up the whole kit here. This is all personal taste of how much you want it weathered. So I'm going to work on that, and then we'll be back. So here we have our finished AT-M6 from Revell. Now the Revell site says that this is a 1/164th scale model. Before I talk any further, I just want to give a quick shout out to my friend at Space Dock Modeling. He recently did a similar video of this rebuild and repaint of the AT-M6, and made a video that inspired me to do kind of the same thing. I did try to do my own thing. I didn't try to copy his work, try to do different colors and stuff of that nature. But check him out at Space Dock Modeling. Talking about the model, I finished up by adding a layer of Tester's dull coat to protect the weathering, the paint job, and to cover over any glossy areas that were still showing from the gloss coat that we added prior to doing the washes and the weathering powders. So that was all I did to finish up from the last segment of the video. And just take a quick look of him. Now I made this simple base for the walker, just using an inexpensive wood plaque. I got this at Hobby Lobby. This size runs about $2 for the wood plaque. I then made a mixture for the sand and gravel area down here. I made a mixture. I used some hobby sand. I used some scenery gravel. Just kind of show you what that kind of looks like. I also got that at Hobby Lobby. Just some scenery gravel, some regular hobby sand, and I mixed that with a little just regular Elmer's white glue, and then mixed that with some water. Stirred it all up. Not to like a watery consistency. It's still kind of thick, but enough, not as thick as the actual white glue. And I mixed that all together, and I spread it on the bottom of our wood plaque here. I gave that time to dry. I think it was several hours. I think I left that overnight to dry. Now once that finished drying, I took some Rust-Oleum, just kind of a light tan color or light brown color, sprayed the whole plaque, and of course gave that time to dry. And then I added a little depth to it by creating a wash, just using some of this craft. This is some burnt sienna color, and mixed that in with just some water to a watery consistency. And I did a wash. If you can tell, there's some color variations going on here. Just a light wash, just to give the display base some texture and some depth in it when you look at it. Give it some contrast to help bring it out. So that's what I did to finish up the base. Oh yeah, and I did just some craft black paint along the edge here. Oh, also when I first applied the gravel and the sand, I let it dry. I then just took some sanding paper, kind of sanded the edges down to make sure we had some nice edges on it. So that's the model. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoyed the rebuild. I think it turned out really well. I think it makes for a much nicer display piece than what I did have. A little different anyway. The modifications really add to it, at least in my opinion. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed the video, and until next time, everybody have a good one.